I'm grateful, Presiding Officer, and to Michael Matheson for the personal statement he has just provided, and I can fully see the difficulty it has caused him. However, questions remain. During that statement, Michael Matheson said he could not understand how he had racked up so much data roaming charges. He went on to say he could not explain the data usage. But of course he did explain the data usage. He told this Parliament, when he claimed for expenses, that it was a legitimate expense. He promised the Parliament it was a legitimate expense. He gave this Parliament written assurances it was a legitimate expense. If it has now transpired that his son was watching football, why did he claim he was doing parliamentary work? Can he say, if he cannot understand at the time or could not explain the data usage, how he could 100% say to the Parliament, when claiming £11,000 of taxpayers' money, that he was doing parliamentary work? The two stories do not align. And it does seem that Parliament was misled to make that claim. Does Michael Matheson agree with that? He also said in his statement that he looked for £3,000 to be taken out of his office cost allowance. Was that his only request, or did he seek more money and more support out of available budgets? He said he made the immediate decision on hearing from his wife to repay the money. But in the statement that he made to the media and to the Scottish public, he said that was as a direct consequence of using an outdated SIM. Did he mislead the Scottish people by using that argument rather than what we now know to be the case? The Health Secretary has belatedly been forced to be honest about the circumstances. But what we cannot ignore and we cannot forget is that months ago he wanted the Scottish taxpayer to pay £11,000 for his roaming bill. That roaming bill was accrued not due to parliamentary duties which he claimed, and therefore he falsely claimed that money. Will the Health Secretary accept that?
Michael Matheson.
Presiding Officer, in my statement, I was clear that at the time when I was notified of the high charges associated with my iPad, that the Parliament IT department contacted the network provider to try and find out more details as to how the costs had been associated with my iPad. Unfortunately, the network provider were unable to provide that information to the Parliament. And therefore, we were unable to identify how the costs of the roaming charges associated with my iPad had been accrued. I therefore, and at that time, I also passed my iPad to the IT department to consider whether there was an issue with it and for them to look at the device. I also made the contribution of £3,000 towards the costs in order to help to meet the costs associated with the Parliament's IT department in meeting the overall costs. That was something which I volunteered in making to the Parliament directly itself. The member makes reference to my statement last Friday, and I made no reference to the fact that that data usage had occurred through members of my family. As I set out in my statement, this has been a very challenging and emotional time for my family. I chose not to provide details of that in my statement on Friday because it would implicate my children in this issue. I chose not to provide that information in order to try and protect them from the inevitable media scrutiny and political interest that would generate. I did that as a father to protect them